Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope, this time for April 18th through the 24th. My name is Cam White. It's been a while since I've done a little bit of an introduction. This week, we have a few transits to talk about that are important, and that's all fine and dandy, but I kind of want to open up on a different message today, and that being how much of an flux we are. Today, I'm recording this, of course, on Friday. This is when I record my weekly horoscopes, and of course, I post them early, ad-free over on my Patreon. However, right now is my first morning experiencing Mars in Pisces. And I kind of just want to talk about how much of a state of change we are in. And I kind of want you to of course, on Friday, you probably felt this a little bit. But as we go into this week, really kind of embrace the feeling of change right now, right? We have Mars in Pisces. We have Venus in Pisces. We have Neptune in Pisces. We have Jupiter in Pisces. And right now, Jupiter is like on top of Neptune. Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces. When we're talking about our vision, our dream, what we believe, what we have hope in, what we have faith in, that planet is in its most favorite position. And that planet is on top of Neptune, this planet of deception and dreams and mysticism and illusion. And so there can be this really overwhelming feeling of what is real, what is not real right now, or what you're excited about and what your vision is. And I kind of want to just start by saying, a lot of this Jupiter Neptune stuff is like a dream. Like I have personally had dreams that have completely, after I had a dream, I woke up and it completely changed my life because of something that I experienced in my sleep, right? We spend a third of our lives sleeping, right? And it's incredible how we can oftentimes ignore how important that is in our lives, especially dreaming. I've had dreams I've woken up from and I made decisions immediately afterwards because it affected me so profoundly. And in that moment of waking up from a dream, that dream wasn't real, but it really felt real. And that dream, even though it wasn't real, had real life implications. And that's what a lot of this Jupiter Neptune is. You don't have to get lost in the idea of that dream might not have been real, but its effects and how you feel and what that means for where you're going. All of that is very real right now. And so I guess just as we go through this week, because we're getting into the eclipse, guys, that April 30th eclipse, and we're going to be getting into the Venus-Jupiter conjunction, the Mars-Jupiter conjunction that we have going on. And I've been saying this in a few of my readings. I'm pretty sure I've said this in my last week horoscope, but I talk a lot and I don't always remember what I say and where I say it. And that is this last part of April and all of May, even into June, is a microcosm of time that will be played out in a macrocosm over the next 4 or 5 years as we go to 2026. So there's all of these little seeds being planted right now, and they're all so subtle. Maybe it's someone you just met. Maybe it's a message that you just got. Maybe it's an idea that just came into your head. Maybe you just moved. I don't know what it is. But all of these little seeds are being planted right now. And so it's just, I think, really important with this Jupiter Neptune stuff, like if you have a vision, if you have a belief, like, yes, Neptune is there. Yes, it can be confusing. Yes, you could be afraid of being deceived. Yes, you're not really sure if it's going to be real or not. But like, I think what's important, and I mean, this comes down to manifesting and the law of attraction stuff. It's all about kind of feeling things, right? You got to get your own personal frequency and vibration up to speed with the things that you want, right? And that's what this time is right now. It's not about, and you can feel amazing in one of your worst times, right? Feeling is something that you do personally on your own, right? You don't need external things to feel stuff. Like you can control your own feelings. And I just think with this Jupiter Neptune, as we go through this week, and I'm talking about this for an opening up this week with this because just a lot of this week is embracing the Jupiter Neptune conjunction that we have right now. And we're just building up towards this eclipse. So like, anyway, I need to kind of get started with this weekly horoscope, but I just wanted to open up with that. Let's talk about what we have to look forward to this week. Sun goes into Taurus. It's usually not really of a big deal, but honestly, there's probably a lot of you that are really looking forward to the sun being in Taurus, where we can kind of slow down a little bit and take heed of things. But really, the only other thing is Mercury conjoins the North Node. That's going to be really important. Mercury's going to square Saturn, which I I mean, it sucks. Like it's a square to Saturn, but I'm not too upset about it because Mercury will also sextile Neptune. And this is before Mercury goes into shadow. That's not going to be something that we have till next week. So this week is kind of, in my opinion, and as we see through the transits, very just embracing all of this Pisces stuff, right? Now that Mars is in Pisces, we're exploring this area. We're really acting our energy out in this area. And it feels good to not have Mars in Aquarius, right? The other thing I want to say before we also start is with Mars in Pisces, like the whole Pisces is like the most mutable sign. It is all about changing. It is all about adapting. It is all about metamorphosis. And so when you have Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Neptune, the ruler of Pisces, like in its home sign and it's on top of Neptune, we are in a state of metamorphosis right now. Even if you don't think you're changing, you are. Even if you don't think things are going, they are. Trust me. Anyway, let's go ahead and start with this week. Pretty much, we start Monday off. Whoops, we should go to this, right? Monday. The moon's going to conjoin the north node in Taurus as it squares Saturn in Aquarius. Then the moon will also be kind of trining Jupiter and Neptune at the same time. And then later on Monday evening, the moon will ingress into Sagittarius and apply to Mars very late in the nighttime. Let me kind of fast forward. Here we go. Monday, moon on the south node in Scorpio. Did I say the north node? I meant to say the south node. My bad. The moon's going to be on the south node in Scorpio. There was a lot of releasing that we have to do. There is a lot of depth there in order to north node in Taurus, right? Go towards the things that we want, go towards the security, go towards the stability. That south node in Scorpio requires us to get our hands dirty. And that moon conjoining the south node on Monday is getting our hands dirty, right? And it's the moon, it's our emotions, it's how we feel, it's what we're kind of reflecting at any given moment. And let's also talk about that the sun is in Aries in a Mars ruled sign, and the moon is in a Mars ruled sign, and Mars is in Pisces. So this is just going to feel like a very emotionally turbulent time. Not really sure how you're going to navigate yourself. Like Mars has been in Capricorn and Aquarius over the past few months, so it's been easy to like apply yourself in a very like strict and disciplined way. Mars in Pisces is very just like, well, I'm going to go here and there, and it works, but it's just maybe it not consistent. And so as the moon on Monday morning is like conjoining the south node in Scorpio, there's this purging, there's this getting rid of, there's this releasing the control over things, right? And the moon is going to make this square to Saturn in Aquarius, where as it's applying to Saturn Aquarius being like, you know, Saturn is pretty much slowing down right now. It's got 2 more degrees to hit. Saturn will station retrograde at 25 degrees, so it's not moving all too fast. But the moon is in the superior position here where it's kind of like, as the moon's in Scorpio scoring Saturn Aquarius, the emotional nature of how you feel that day is going against maybe the things that you're kind of responsible for or what you have to do. And it's just draining. It's just exhausting. There's this resistance, I think, that you're going to feel to making these changes, that you're going to feel to, and you're also maybe going to feel stuck on one side, right? Like Scorpio squaring Aquarius is very like stuck, very immovable. But then the moon is going to be trining Jupiter and Neptune, where, you know, it's really easy right now to, of course, envision like good things, but Jupiter and Neptune, it's like you can imagine, like, you know, dreams are great and nightmares are also, I don't want to say great, but just as powerful as dreams. And this moon in Scorpio trining Jupiter and Neptune is, you know, like this could easily be like a nightmare day. I could easily see a lot of people have like nightmares around this. And there's something about the resisting that's so, like there's so much resistance right now in the astrology, and we're going to keep talking about that. But as the moon's trining Jupiter and Neptune, it's going to be really easy to like see the big picture and see what's next and see that vision. But I just think the reality of like moon and Scorpio scoring Saturn Aquarius is it's just very draining. It's very exhausting. You know what you have to let go of, you know what you have to purge out, and it's for the best. And it's maybe a little bit lighter, but moon squaring Saturn, it's just hard. It's just hard. Later on, as we get into Monday, the moon is then going to ingress into Sagittarius, where there's that sense of sweet, sweet freedom. You know, it's kind of like, you ever have like a really hard conversation with someone and you didn't want to have it, and then once it's done, it's like, all right, can we go now? Can we move on to something else? Like that's the moon in Sagittarius. And that's going to be really late into Monday night, even early into Tuesday morning for some people. And the moon will be squaring this Mars in Pisces, where there's no running. This is one of the things I love about Pisces. There's really no running from things, right? Like Sagittarius, we have that issue. If we just think, you know, escape, running away, that fixes all the problems, but there is no really running away. especially when the thing that you're trying to run away from is internal. It's you, it's your conscious. And this moon squaring Mars, I feel like is going to be like, this, like, let me just purge, let me just get rid of this. There's a lot of resistance, or maybe you even resist letting go of something, or you resist like wanting to let go of that. And I think as the moon goes into Sag and squares Mars, there's this like, want to escape and want to avoid, and it's just unavoidable. And I think the more positive way to kind of deal with this is kind of like, hey, again, you're moving on now. Like, there's this time where a lot of us can really rewrite a lot of stories in our lives. And this moon in Sag squares Mars and Mars and Pisces, where it's kind of like, let the story write itself, right? Like, again, I've talked a lot about this of like, we're just passengers on this journey. We think we have control over things, and it's a fun little illusion, but it's not real. A lot of it is just letting things, like, this is why we do astrology, right? Like you have a higher path. There's something looking out for you, and that's what's kind of going on. And I think this moon in Sag squaring Mars and Pisces is very kind of like trusting that path, going down that path. And maybe there's a little bit resistance. The moon in Sag wants to be like, oh, we're going to go here, want to go here, but Mars in Pisces says, just take one step at a time. And I think as the moon's in Sag wanting to escape and wanting to, be distracted, Mars in Pisces asks you to get like really centered, really clear. Because otherwise you're going to feel very distracted and very avoided as we go like later into Monday night, going into Tuesday. Whoops, there we go. Let's go ahead and bring up Tuesday. Tuesday, sun goes into Taurus as the moon pretty much applies to a square with Venus. Not bad. Honestly, I kind of really like the sun going into Taurus. I kind of joked last week that it's kind of boring because, again, I'm a fire sign. So I like things to be more fun and adventurous. But anyway, we get into Tuesday, and the sun does not ingress into Taurus until later on in the evening. So I think that's also important because it's like we might start things maybe very ambitiously because the moon's in Sagittarius and the sun's in Aries. But as we get into later on Tuesday evening, things will kind of solidify and kind of slow down. But pretty much all day, not a lot's going on. The moon will be applying to a square with Venus, and then it's not really until later on in the evening where that aspect perfects. And the sun enters Taurus around 9 p.m. Yeah, super late. And that's around when the moon squares Venus. So a lot of Tuesday is that moon square Mars as we wake up, right? Like, I want to go, I want to avoid, but Mars in Pisces is like, there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to hide. And as we kind of build throughout Tuesday, the sun will go into Taurus, where the sun being like our energy, like literal life force energy being into Taurus is, we're out of the winter now. I told you guys, it was going to be a rough winter, and it fucking was. And now with everything in Pisces, it's like moving on to the next thing. And I think as the sun goes into Taurus, like finally we can get some stability and some security. And I think with the sun being like our energizer, there's this, we got out of Aries season, we sprung into step, and now there's this level of consistency that feels very safe, that feels very valuable. And as the sun goes into Taurus, it's like focusing on the consistency, focusing on the growth, focusing on what is going to nourish you, focusing on like sun and Taurus stuff. Like, okay, we're out of the winter depression. Unfortunately, a lot of the people down south are going into the winter depression, so hang tight. But anyway, sun will go into Taurus. And then on Tuesday, the moon, again, will perfect that square to Venus, where the moon in Sag squaring Venus in Pisces is... It's not bad. It's definitely not bad. It's just kind of like moon in Sag is like, oh, we're going to go to this place, and we're going to go and have fun here. But Venus in Pisces is like, magically doesn't end up going there and ends up going somewhere else. Like this is a very happy accident. Like a lot of Pisces is happy accidents that, what's his face, that painter? I can never remember the names of people I reference in the middle of a video, but then like once I end the video, I remember everyone's name. Anyway, moon's going to square Venus. Bob Ross? That sounds wrong to me, but anyway, moon's going to square Venus. And there's this kind of like, emotionally, we're going to want to escape, or like, ooh, have you ever been like intimate with someone and been very like, like Pisces is like enjoying the moment, but then like certain people might like feel like uncomfortable in those type of moments and might want to avoid an escape, like maybe intimate, like people have like intimacy issues. That could be like this, right? And so I think as the sun's in Taurus and everything kind of stabilizes, it's going to be like your moon and Sag is so used to going a million miles an hour and going really fast that it might feel weird to kind of slow down at this point. Like it's kind of like when we got like a kid, like this is how I used to be. Like I'd get home from like riding my bike and just be like cracked out of energy. My mom would be like, how do we get this to like settle down? That's like what this is right now. So that brings us to Wednesday. And on Wednesday, the moon is going to make a sextile to Saturn as it makes this square to Jupiter and Neptune. as it leaves Sagittarius, and then it will ingress into Capricorn. I'm loving the moon in Capricorn transit this time around. I think it's really, really exciting. Let's go ahead and bring this up. We go into Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, and pretty much, yeah, the moon makes the sextile to Saturn, where what I love about this little moon and Sag transit as of late, and this will kind of be true for the next little while, is it's sextile Saturn, but like will square Jupiter. And it's the same thing as like moon and Scorpio squaring Saturn, but trining Jupiter. It's kind of like, you know, when something works out with Jupiter, it doesn't work out with Saturn, but something works out with Saturn, it doesn't really work well with Jupiter. So it's kind of like, it's difficult. It's not necessarily just handed to you. But as the moon's in Sagittarius, first making the sextile to Saturn in Aquarius is like Sagittarius being explorative, being fun. It's a fire sign, right? Saturn in Aquarius might be dystopian, but it's still an air sign where it's still about ideas and intellect and how do we, you know, formulate concrete structures of ideas, of societies. And I think this moon in Sag, kind of like openness to explore, or moon, like wanting to look at life through the big philosophical lens, sextiling Saturn Aquarius kind of like gives you, Saturn is a helping hand in this, kind of like giving you a little sense of reality, like a nice little reality check. Because what I think is hard is like the moon will sextile Saturn and Aquarius, and it's like, okay, I feel a little bit grounded in reality. But then as the moon squares Jupiter and Neptune, it kind of will go against that vision. And the challenge in life is like, how do you create what's inside and literally create it on the outside, right? Like, how do you create what's in your heart and what's in your mind on that outside level? And you're not, again, it's not going to be really easy. You're going to be given challenges. And this looks much more of like Saturn and Aquarius coming in, where the reality of what it will actually look like for you might take shape, but it might go against your vision. And what's really important about this manifesting stuff and this law of attraction stuff, I know I'm getting super woo-woo on you guys right now, but that's me with all this Pisces stuff. Like, you have to know when it's in front of you. You can't manifest something and then only think it's that way, and then something comes up with you, it checks it and it totally checks out with what you want, and it may not exactly be what you were exactly envisioning, but it creates the same feeling. You got to be able to realize when something's in front of you, right? And there's, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's also a level of being able to accept one, like deny that and want more and go for more. But there's a lot, and I talked about this in one of my really early delineation podcasts when I just started it, about Jupiter and Pisces and self-awareness. And I really think this moon and Sagittarius and Jupiter and Pisces is kind of like, okay, moon sextiling Saturn Aquarius, reality check. This is what can be real, and that might go against your vision. And all you're going to have to do is just clarify that vision more. And I think it'll be easier to clarify that vision or clarify that feeling of whatever it is, because Saturn's there. Saturn's helping make things, like crystallize things and make things real. So it's just going to be about getting out of your own way and letting yourself be like, okay, this was the ideal I had in mind. And that might be really idealistic, but this is what the reality of it could be, right? You know, we all have dreams and ambitions of what exactly we want to have. And sometimes that happens, but then other times there's things that are so close to it that it might as well be it, and that we should take that. And I think that's what's kind of going on here. And what day is this? We're still on, this is Wednesday. So then, and then after that, the moon, pretty much as we get into later of Wednesday, the moon will go into Capricorn. It's go time, guys. Like look at what's going on right now. The moon is going to be in aversion to Saturn. They're not going to be talking. The moon is going to be sextiling all of this Pisces stuff, and it's going to be trining all of this Taurus stuff. So there's something really solid about this moon in Capricorn transit. It's really like a lot of the magic kind of coming together. And so we'll have, we pretty much go into Thursday morning, and oh, I should probably bring up the Thursday thing. Yeah, so pretty much we get into Thursday, and the moon will sextile Mars, and it will trine the sun. I usually don't talk about sun trines, but we really go from like a little bit of a fire energy to a really solid earth and water energy, which is really replenishing in my opinion. But then the moon will also make a trine to Uranus. I mean, I kind of don't care about that, to be honest with you, but I think it will be a little helpful, at least this time around. It's not too random. So pretty much on Thursday, moon ingresses into Capricorn. Leave your emotions at the door. Check out. Get some work done. Like, get out of your body. You know what I mean? Get out of that type of stuff and channel something, right? That moon is going to sextile Mars in Pisces, where it's like, you know, I kind of think about how in an artist's room, or even let's talk about maybe like an engineer or a carpenter. A workshop is having all of your tools accessible and available at your whim, and you want to be organized with those things. So then in those moments, you can then know exactly where that tool is and know where to apply it in the magic of those moments, right? And this moon in Capricorn, sextiling Mars and Pisces is so for example, like I don't text and drive. I kind of hate texting and driving. Like just fucking wait. And also I love, please give me a minute to not have to look at my phone. But anyway, something that I do is like, and this is something I wasn't good at doing, but like if I have an idea in my head, before it goes away, like my fucking squirrel brain, I write it down. Like I'll even be in the middle of driving, like I have to write this note down. I have to get this idea down. And this moon in Capricorn, sextiling Mars and Pisces is like all like this, that, moving here, moving there. And it's kind of feeling like moon in Capricorn is kind of emotionally like, again, checking out, just getting the work done. But as it sextiles Mars and Pisces and trines the sun in Taurus, there's this level of consistency. There's this level of security. And Mars and Pisces is just kind of making it happen. It's like 1 minute you're doing this, 1 minute you're doing that. And it feels, I think I really like Thursday, to be honest with you guys. And it's not until the moon makes that trine to Uranus later on where, so if I were to, I guess, probably the best analogy for the moon in Capricorn trining Uranus and Taurus is just like a brain blast idea. I think of like a Jimmy Neutron brain blast idea. Moon in Capricorn trining Uranus and Taurus is like also being inventive, not being afraid to maybe take a risk, having some type of unexpected thing occur that actually kind of helps you out and helps you out in your work. So it just kind of seems like the reason I think this moon trine Uranus is a little bit more important is because the moon makes the sextile to Mars in Pisces where like you're already kind of in the groove for like random magical accidents to occur. And this kind of seems like, it's kind of like in engineering music. So when I produce, which by the way, I have, don't get me wrong, my working on my music very hard. It's coming out really soon. But in like sound engineering, when I first got into it, it's so like you just black out because it's just too confusing. But like sometimes like what I do is really kind of play with a weird noise, or like I'll just do something and I kind of just really just fuck around with it. And then sometimes, you tweak it and you tweak it and you think you have the sound that you want. And you're like, okay, this sounds good. And you deal with that sound for a while, right? But then you're like, what if I just changed this little fucking thing? And all of a sudden that sound just becomes so much better and so much clearer. And it makes the song that you're working on really unfold itself much more. And that's just what this looks like. It's like you're already tinkering with stuff. You're already kind of pushing buttons. And then you'll kind of get something together where you're like, this works. I like this. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that was even better. So not too bad in my opinion. And let me just also say this too. I'm kind of flying through this weekly horoscope and I think that's good because sometimes they take a little bit too long. But Venus is getting closer and closer to Neptune, and Jupiter's still on Neptune in my opinion. Like Jupiter doesn't leave the conjunction to Neptune until it goes into Aries in my opinion. But there's just so much like euphoric change. And what I love about Pisces too is it's that time where, well, for example, if you were like me and you got in a lot of trouble at school, you might be like, let's say you get like detention or OCC, and like at first you might be like the Aquarius thing is like you deal with the authority and you get outcasted and that sucks. But there's typically a moment, like maybe even in the sense of boredom, where you kind of forget that you're bored and maybe you just get like lost in your head. Maybe it's also like a driving in the car and you're in traffic. You're like, fuck, this is boring. But then your mind just kind of wanders around and you start daydreaming and you start being creative and you start kind of forgetting about where you're at, and you're not even thinking about your drive and you're not even thinking about the time passes by, and holy shit, you're already at your destination. Oh my God, detention's already over. Oh my God. That's what's going on right now. This Pisces moment with Venus, Neptune, Jupiter is we're just daydreaming. You might feel like, oh, I'm totally checked in. Wait till everything goes into Aries, because right now this is, and they talk about this on all that type of woke woo-woo personal development stuff of like, when you're in autopilot, and again, this like very like Pisces is kind of like autopilot in order to daydream about stuff. But there's this kind of like, when you're in autopilot and you're just driving to your destination, you're thinking, it's like all of a sudden, boom, you're there. That's what's going on right now. We're in this daydream mode. We're in this state of thinking and reflecting and feeling. And then all of a sudden, when everything goes into Aries, time to check out, time to put on your game face and go for whatever is happening. But that's just, I bring that up because in this moment, it may not feel like that because we're working in, astrology is such this beautiful like organization of time, and there's so many different layers to time, and this idea that we have days and hours or just the Gregorian calendar is bullshit. Astrology, we have like 1,000 layers of time to work with, and this time frame is very like, again, this next month and a half is a very microcosm of the next 6 years, and in these moments, you're just not going to see it. And I think that's the fun part about the magic of Pisces, right? You're like, and I brought up like the Cloud Atlas thing the other week, but I also just watched it because I brought it up. And there's something like, it jumps. And you're not realizing in this movie what connects until you kind of go along for it for a minute. So anyway, as this is all going on, I think we're just in a moment of time that isn't necessarily what we think it is. So that's Thursday. Moon's going to trine Uranus. And then we go into Friday. Moon's going to sextile Venus. Then after the moon sextiles Venus, it's going to start to trine Mercury. Then after it trines Mercury, it's going to sextile Jupiter and Neptune. So Friday, everything's starting to come together. So Thursday is kind of like, much more hardworking. This is much more rewards coming out and benefits happening. Let's get to Friday. Look at that. The moon sextiling Venus and Pisces. Yes. Like, the moon in Capricorn of this kind of like emotional, like Venus and Pisces can use the emotional stability of the moon in Capricorn, but I think there's this kind of receiving pleasure, right? The moon's also trining. Well, it's kind of like happening. It's like the moon will sextile Venus and then immediately trine Mercury within like an hour or two of each other. So it just kind of seems like Venus and Pisces, water. Well, like, here's a good example. If you've ever worked, what's a good example? Well, like, have you ever been in a professional setting and you were complimented in like not a creepy way? Cause like trust me, I've had people compliment me in very creepy ways. One time I used to work at Lush in Vegas in the Mandalay Bay, and I literally had like 2 older divorced women like wait till Lush closed and then like followed me to the parking lot one time. So I understand it can be creepy. I've had total shit in retail and customer service. But there's also times where I think of moon in Capricorn, right? You have to be professional, but then sometimes you might get a customer work with someone that just like is very charming and like uplifts you or like gives you like a compliment or something. You're like, oh, that was really nice. I'm moon in Capricorn right now and I'm in a professional setting, but it feels good. That's what like this is. Like Venus in Pisces is very like, oh, magical little thing out of left field. And the moon in Capricorn's like, oh, like I still have to be moon in Capricorn. I still got shit to do, but like that felt really good. And you kind of have to like still have a matter of like professionalism. But I think also though, when you kind of get that type of stuff, it's like moon in Capricorn is like, yeah, like I'm totally about working and shit like that. The moon is then going to trine Mercury in Taurus, where what I like about this is I've been kind of waiting for this transit because Mercury is like pretty much on the North Node right now. And Mercury is flying through Taurus in case you haven't been able to tell. But Mercury, our ideas, communication, thoughts, rationality, it's in Taurus, it's fixed, right? We're fixated on certain concepts, on certain wants. And the Mercury is only getting closer and closer to that North Node. So it's only having those desires more and more and more and fixated on those desires more and more and more. And that moon in Capricorn is like Venus in Pisces is like the little boost of fun energy that the moon needs to like trine Mercury, where it's like, yep, we're going to keep going. Everything, like there's just this flow state from like, what is it? Like, I think pretty much when the moon enters Capricorn, Wednesday night, Thursday, Friday, there's this flow state because then the moon trines Mercury, right? And everything's like coming together. Like, what's that mean? Like, all right. Oh yeah, it's all coming together. Emperor's New Groove is like one of my favorite movies. Anyway, so then the moon leaves that trine to Mercury. And then as we get later on into the evening, that's when the moon will start to sextile Jupiter and Neptune. And again, Jupiter, Neptune, the vision, the fantasy, the ideal, but also, you know, the confusion of what's real and what's not. The moon is sextiling it. So this moon in Capricorn, like the ability to kind of apply yourself, the moon, especially how we feel, and Saturn just like being disciplined, being serious, having that emotional maturity. As it sextiles Jupiter, Neptune, that is what's kind of like, it's going to help pour water into the Jupiter, Neptune, like plants. Like Jupiter, Neptune is like a bunch of seeds that you have planted, and this moon in Capricorn is like the nutrients trining or sextiling going into there, like making it, helping it grow. So again, just Thursday and Friday is very flow state, very worky, very just kind of like things coming together in random magical accidents, almost as. And I'm very woo woo right now, as you could tell. But anyway, then we get into Saturday, and on Saturday, that's when we have the moon ingress into Aquarius. I don't really like this as much, but then Mercury conjoins the North Node. So the moon going into Aquarius, it's going to square Taurus. It's Taurus, gosh. It's going to square the sun in Taurus. And, you know, it's like here in Denver right now. Denver's funny in the winter. Like all of these things will like be growing, but then we'll get like a blizzard and it'll be like really cold. And, you know, things can still be like growing and good. Like you're not like, I always think of it as like kind of like hiccups on the, like when you are in a space of growth and you're doing good things, you're going to slip up and you're going to fuck up sometimes. And that moon in Aquarius squaring sun in Taurus is very like, again, there's going to be good days and there's going to be bad days. And in the good times, you're going to have bad days. And in the bad times, you're going to have good days. And I feel like this moon in Aquarius squaring sun in Taurus is very, you know, it's just a little distant. It's just a little cold. I think as the moon is in Aquarius and our emotions are very connected to like, you know, thoughts and ideas in society and larger groups of people, and it squares the sun in Taurus, there's this kind of like resistance. This is a very stubborn day. This is not a, oh, we're all gonna, you know, totally be adaptable and workable. This is a very, I'm fixated in my mind type day. The other reason I say that is Mercury's on the North Node here. What do I like about Mercury on the North Node? I like Mercury on the North Node for like, as someone who's very scatterbrained all the time of like being hyper fixated on like certain goals, certain like Mercury and Taurus too is like, you know, communicating with the tools of Venus, right? Through beauty, through love, through harmony, through joy, through all of the, you know, good things. And I think and I've talked a little bit about this in my node video. If you guys haven't watched that, you should check it out. But like the North Node being about like what we have to grow into, in the South Node of like what we're releasing, what we're purging, and this Mercury on top of the North Node in Taurus, I think is really mentally clicking and really understanding of like what that growth means, of like what value is for you right now. Because that's what Taurus is, right? What is valuable? Sometimes that's food. Sometimes that's, you know, pleasure. Sometimes that's, well, it's also what is fun, what is enjoyment, what is fulfilling. You have to think Taurus, and I talked about this in my Venus retrograde video, Taurus is ruled by Venus, but it's exalted by the moon, right? So there's this sense of pleasure and fun, but also comfortability and like nourishment. And I think as Mercury is in this area where we're really trying to understand what that means mentally, right? Like rationally speaking, and it's on the North Node, it's like there's this hyper fixation of like, this is what I value. This is what, you know, I need. This is what I want. And I think as that moon's in Aquarius squaring the sun in Taurus, like sun in Taurus doesn't give a fuck about Aquarius stuff. Like Aquarius might be stubborn, but I ain't never met no one more stubborn than a Taurus. And even a Scorpio is a little bit changeable. And so I just kind of think that there's this like, this is my line in the sand. This is where I'm at, you know, get a bull to, if a bull is laying down on the ground, try to get it to get up. Like the Saturn in Aquarius is going to be like poking the moon in Aquarius is like, get up, bull. You need to go to your different cage. It ain't happening. It ain't happening. So I think there's a lot of stubbornness here, but I think this is also like, you should draw a line. You should be really fucking clear about what you value, about what you want, about where things are going. I think that moon in Aquarius, you know, sometimes you're going to have to kind of like, it's one of those things of what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Anyway, so Mercury's on the North Node. I think the other thing though too would be like, this is a great day to not get into much of heated conversations. What I don't like about Mercury on the North Node is it's very stubborn, very fixed, but just like, you know, just let your brain, as someone who has a brain that goes 10 billion miles an hour, and I like when it does that because I can get a lot done. Mercury on the North Node, it's like, sometimes I also like silence. Like I'm a Mars and Venus and Gemini. So like, I'm the type of person that can like read a book, listen to music, and have like a podcast on at the same time and like do other things. Like sometimes I always kind of joke to myself, like, I wish I could listen to music while recording a video. Cause I totally would. But there's also times where I want complete silence because it's just too much. And that's very Mercury on the North Node. It's very, very loud for some of you guys. And I think this will be a really good day to like try to avoid those energetically noisy and loud places where maybe your mind can't like slow down. So that's Saturday, and whatever. Moon's going to be in Aquarius. I don't really know how I feel about the weekend being the weekend. So then we get into Sunday, and on Sunday, this is the one. On Sunday, we have a few things. Mercury's going to square Saturn, and it's going to sextile Neptune at the same time. Little kind of mixed messages there. But then the moon will be conjoining Saturn and squaring Mercury. And Sunday is like where things kind of, again, we're in a little bit of a microcosm, but what's important about this Mercury-Saturn square is Mercury's not in shadow yet, but Mercury in June, so alert, I'm making an announcement for the next 6 months. In June, Mercury will station direct, square Saturn, and then right when Mercury stations direct, exactly squaring Saturn, Saturn will station retrograde. That's the beginning of June. So what's important about Sunday is we're not finishing whatever happens to you on Sunday is not going to get worked out, not until the beginning of June. So we have a whole nother week of April, all of May, and then the first week of June, then it all gets settled out. So buckle up, because May is a very, very wild ride, and you're in for a lot. And that kind of starts with sundown, this Mercury square Saturn. And I kind of like this square to Saturn simply because it's not if Mercury were to enter shadow and then square Saturn, I'd be like, ooh. But Mercury square Saturn and then enter shadow. So it almost tells me that this occurrence of Mercury square Saturn is the thing that kickstarts whatever the Mercury retrograde is going to be for you. So just pay attention. And it's not again, if Mercury entered shadow and then squared Saturn, it'd be like, oh, you're going to be dealing with the square to Saturn stuff the whole time, versus it's square Saturn enter shadow. It's that experience of Mercury square Saturn is going to give you ideas and change your mind about a lot of things that you will eventually come back to resolve. So anyway, let's go ahead and talk about Sunday. Let's see. Mercury square Saturn and sextile Neptune. A lot of going nowhere fast on this one. Same thing with the moon on top of Saturn, making that square to Mercury. I mean, first Mercury square Saturn. So Mercury in Taurus, it's also very close to Algol here. So there's a lot of, so much stubbornness in Taurus and Aquarius. Immovability, right? It takes millennia for wind to affect the earth, right? Wind can affect the trees. So when I think of earth signs, Taurus is bedrock soil. Virgo is plants. So let's think of a plant. A tree can be bended and manipulated by the wind. And that is very Virgo, right? A mutable earth sign. Changeable, adaptable, physical earth. Taurus is not changeable or adaptable earth. And Aquarius is fixed wind, not changeable wind. Heavy, winter wind. And it just takes a long time for the wind. The wind can eventually carve things in the earth, but it just takes millennia. So a lot of going nowhere fast here. But I think as Mercury's in Taurus and we're coming from this, this is Mercury is really hyper fixated in this place. So it might even be good to detach in some places, right? The moon conjoining Saturn is okay, can you see a different perspective? Can you look at this from a bird's eye view? Can you step in the other person's shoes? I think that will be a big challenge. But I think this moon on Aquarius on top of Saturn, the moon on top of Saturn squaring Mercury is kind of it is what it is. And I think as Mercury is sextiling Neptune, it's kind of hard because I think Mercury squaring Saturn is so realistic. It's so this is the reality. None of this is moving. None of this is giving along. For a lot of people, because Mercury will be going into shadow, this is going to be a delay. If you were this is what I want and this is what I'm fixated, you're going to have a delay. And it's the Saturn and Aquarius stuff. Well, again, too, what's funny so right now, even though they're saying that this is Putin's price hike because of the inflation, why there's inflation is because they injected 40% of the cash flow in 2020. And because it takes a while for things to unfold, there's more money, so money is worth less. And that's why we have inflation, and along with other things. But I mentioned last week about the lockdowns. The Mars-Saturn conjunction was there should be more lockdowns. And there's more lockdowns in China right now, and I've talked about this before, but what's important is we're not going to feel the effects of that for a while. It's a delayed. It's not they go into lockdown and all of a sudden we're out of stuff. It's more supply chain stuff. And this just seems very moon on top of Saturn, Mercury squaring it is a lot of it's out of your control. A lot of it's, Mercury squaring Saturn is very delays in goods based off of authoritarian lockdowns of COVID zero. So like, that's also something that's happening. I'm not saying this exact transit means that. I'm just saying that's a really good maybe analogy for that. But I think as Mercury's in Taurus squaring Saturn in Aquarius, you're going to be given a problem. You're going to be given an issue. But the thing is, Mercury's crafty, and Mercury is the trickster, and it's on the North Node, and it's on Algol. Mercury's going to find a way to do what it wants. Mercury's going to go into Gemini, and it's going to retrograde in Gemini, and it's going to fucking do its thing, and it's going to get out of this situation. So I would just say that you're going to be handed a delay. You're going to be handed an issue, a rejection. Like Saturn is very like, this is coming to a stop, right? Saturn is also in the superior position here. That's what's really important. Moon conjoining Saturn. Mercury can say this and want that, and there's going to be this slowdown. And so it's going to take a while for Mercury to reconfigure things. So the way I would look at this is, as we kind of go into Sunday, you're going to be met with resistance. And I think you should accept that resistance is there for this moment, but you should start to get crafty and think about other ways to get what you want, right? Mercury sextiling Neptune and Pisces. Like, just because an authority tells you, like, this is why lawyers exist. The law doesn't mean anything because you can just manipulate whatever into whatever. And also the law doesn't mean anything anymore because now we can make laws that are based in zero reality. So I look at this as, how bad do you want it? And as that square Saturn, are you really going to let the Saturn in Aquarius get in your way of that? And this is just planting the seeds for the Mercury retrograde that we're going to be dealing all of May. So this is a long-term thing here. And Mercury doesn't enter shadow till next week. But as that moon conjoined Saturn squares Mercury, I think you're going to be told no. I think there's going to be this kind of resistance to how things are going to go as far as plans and delays and things like that. But as it sextiles Neptune, I think this offers an ability to see a bigger picture, to be creative and all that stuff. So that's Sunday. Next week, guys, alert. I need to get like a button that's like alert, alert, alert. Alert. Next week, Mercury enters shadow. Venus conjoins Neptune. Venus conjoins Jupiter and will be at her exalted degree on top of the ruler of her sign, which is insane. There's a solar eclipse next week. We go into eclipse season next week. If you're new to astrology, like recently, if you're very new to astrology, like within the past couple months, eclipse season means it's about to go down. Eclipse season is the 2 craziest weeks of every 6 months. Solar eclipse in Taurus. This is the first set of eclipses with the North Node and South Node in Taurus, on top of the Venus-Jupiter conjunction. In my 2022 year ahead horoscope and all my rising sign horoscopes and everything that I've talked about, I have talked about April 30th from the mountaintops for a long time. That's all going down. It's one of the biggest days this week. And then Mercury enters Gemini at the same time, and it goes into its home sign. Next week is huge. And so I want to end off with this as far as final thoughts. Like I said in the opening of this video, we are in a state of flux right now. Things are changing. Be open to that change. Embrace that change. Don't ignore your dreams and your intuition. Listen to that inside of your heart and go after that, even if the Neptune cloud of deception and illusion is telling you why you can't make it or why it is impossible. This isn't a time of being in reality because Jupiter's conjoining Neptune. This is a time of taking chances with your dreams and with your vision and with what your heart wants. But there's a level of having to accept that and having to know that you know that you know that, and kind of take leaps of faith and not necessarily like steps of discernment. So I think, again, this week isn't that big of a week, but I think it is also at the same time. Because, well, every moment in your life is a big moment. Every life is about those moments, right? And the decisions that you make in those moments. This week offers, I think, a lot of moments to make little decisions that will have a bigger effect later on. So I think I'm going to leave you guys off with that. Thank you so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and truly appreciate every single one of you, and I'll be seeing you next week.